Most people will never think a single original thought in their entire lives. And the terrifying part? They won't know it. They'll die convinced they were thinkers, because they argued on the internet, formed strong opinions, voted with passion. But arguing isn't thinking. Having preferences isn't thinking. Repeating what you heard someone else say, with more confidence, that isn't thinking either. Real thinking is rare. And those who actually do it, they become dangerous. Not to others. To the comfortable, sleeping world around them. There's a reason the first man in history put on trial for thinking too loudly was sentenced to death. His name was Socrates, and Plato, his student, watched it happen. Watched a city of educated, civilized people kill a man for asking questions. And from that moment, Plato dedicated his life to understanding one thing. Why do human beings fear their own minds? What he found will disturb you. Because it's not about ancient Greece, it's about you. Right now, today, consider the life you're living, the career you're in, the beliefs you hold, the circle you belong to. Ask yourself, honestly, how many of those things did you actually choose? How many of those things chose you and you simply agreed because the cost of disagreeing felt too high? Plato described something he called the cave, a group of people chained underground since birth, watching shadows dance on the wall in front of them. Those shadows, cast by objects passing in front of a fire behind them, are all they've ever known. To them, the shadows are not shadows, they are reality. They name them, study them, celebrate the ones who can predict their movements best. The most respected prisoner in the cave is the one who best understands shadows. Now here's the part that hits differently the older you get. When one prisoner escapes, when he stumbles out into sunlight, when his eyes burn and water and he sees the actual objects, the actual world, he doesn't feel liberated at first. He feels pain. He wants to go back. The familiar darkness felt safer than this blinding, overwhelming truth. That's not metaphor, that's psychology, that's neurology. That's what happens every time a human being begins to think for themselves. Most people are not afraid of lies. They're afraid of the discomfort that comes after truth. Think about the last time someone told you something that challenged a belief you've held for years. Did you immediately open up and reconsider? Or did you feel something like anger, like threat, like the ground shifting under your feet? That's the cave. That's your nervous system protecting the comfortable shadow world you've built. And the tragedy is, that protective system can masquerade as intelligence. The most sophisticated defenses against truth are built by smart people. Plato called this the difference between opinion and knowledge. He didn't mean it as an insult. He meant it as a map. Opinion lives on the surface. It's fast, tribal, emotional. It responds to what's popular, what's safe, what feels true within the walls of whatever cave you grew up in. Opinion doesn't need evidence. It needs consensus. It needs applause. And the world is absolutely flooded with it. Knowledge, real knowledge, requires dissent. You have to go down before you can go up. You have to question the things you're most certain about. You have to sit with not knowing, which is unbearable for most people. Most people would rather be confidently wrong than uncertain and honest. Here's where it gets darker. The world has a relationship with people who think for themselves, and it is not a kind one, because an independent mind is a threat to every system that depends on your agreement to consume what they sell, your agreement to believe what they declare, your agreement to stay where they need you to stay. Plato understood that the cave isn't just ignorance, it's a social structure. The prisoners don't just choose the shadows. They depend on each other to confirm the shadows are real. When someone escapes, it doesn't just disrupt that one person's life. It threatens the entire system of shared belief. And so when the escaped prisoner comes back, when he tries to show them what he saw, they don't follow him. They attack him. Of course they do. He's telling them their whole world is a lie. This is why original thinkers throughout history have been persecuted, exiled, ridiculed, silenced. Not by evil people, by ordinary people defending their ordinary world. There's something deeply unsettling about that. Evil requires no courage to resist. But the ordinary, the majority, the consensus, the reasonable-sounding crowd, that takes a different kind of strength to stand against. And so, what do most people do? They adapt. They learn the language of the cave. They speak in approved shadow names. They perform the right opinions, wear the right masks, hold the right allegiances. Not because they're cowards, necessarily, but because the alternative feels like social death, exile, loneliness, being the person in the room who says the thing no one wanted said. But here's the truth Plato spent his whole life trying to hand to anyone willing to take it. The mind that conforms to keep peace will always be owned by someone. That's not a metaphor. That's a power dynamic. Every belief you hold that you've never interrogated is a leash that someone else holds the end of. And you might not even know it. In fact, and this is the truly disturbing part, the more educated you are, the more sophisticated your leash can be. The cage can be built out of vocabulary, out of credentials, out of the subtle social rewards given to those who confirm what powerful institutions want confirmed. Thinking for yourself isn't about being contrarian. It's not about distrust or rebellion. Plato wasn't building a philosophy of cynics. He was building a philosophy of people who see clearly. There's a difference between the person who rejects everything and the person who questions everything. One is just the shadow of rebellion. The other is the painful, patient work of waking up. And waking up, real waking up, changes you in ways that are hard to explain to people who haven't done it. You start to see the machinery behind conversations, the way people perform certainty to avoid admitting confusion, the way communities bond over shared enemies rather than shared understanding, the way intelligence can be weaponized to protect ignorance. You see it in politics, in religion, in philosophy itself, in the way we scroll, consume, react, and call it engagement. You see the cave everywhere. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, which is both the gift and the burden. Because the person who thinks for themselves lives in a strange kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of someone who has no one, but the loneliness of someone who can't fully belong to the world of shadows, because they know they're shadows. They're surrounded by people having very passionate conversations about shadows, and they have to decide, do I participate? Do I try to point toward the light? Do I stay silent? There's no clean answer. Plato knew that. Socrates chose to speak and paid the ultimate price. But here's what Plato knew that Socrates perhaps didn't account for enough. The world doesn't change because you defeat it. The world changes because you become something it hasn't seen before. Because one person who thinks clearly, who acts from genuine understanding rather than inherited fear, creates a gravity that others feel, even if they can't name it. The most powerful thing you can do in a world of borrowed thoughts is to have a thought that is entirely, uncomfortably, irreducibly your own, not a thought that sounds original, not a thought that performs independence. An actual thought, arrived at through doubt, through silence, through the willingness to be wrong, to start over, to sit in the dark without the comfort of consensus. That is what Plato was pointing toward. Not knowledge as information, knowledge as transformation. Not philosophy as a subject you study. Philosophy as something that changes the structure of how you see. The question isn't whether you know the right things. The question is whether you have ever truly questioned the foundations of what you believe and survived the questioning with something real on the other side. Most people won't do this because it costs something no one can give back to you once you spend it. Comfort. The comfort of the cave. The warmth of the fire. The familiar dance of the shadows. But you're still watching, still here, which means some part of you already suspects the shadows aren't enough. That suspicion, that quiet, uncomfortable feeling that the world you've been given might not be the world that actually exists, that isn't anxiety. That isn't weakness. That is the first movement of the mind toward light. The only question left is whether you'll chain yourself back to the wall, or keep walking,